The chief financial officer of the Trump Organization has handed himself in to New York authorities after he was indicted in connection with a tax investigation. State prosecutors have charged the Trump Organization and Alan Weisselberg over tax crimes. It marks the first criminal charge against the former U.S. president's company following a 3-year investigation. No charges are expected to be brought against Donald Trump personally. Frank Ucciardo has this report.
The Trump Organization is being investigated by Manhattan's District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. for what he called possible protracted criminal conduct, including tax and insurance fraud and falsification of business records. Donald Trump's legal challenges to the probe came to a halt in February when the U.S. Supreme Court declined his appeal to delay a grand jury subpoena for his tax records and financial documents from the Trump Organization.
If there are recordings, if there are some forms of evidence that can't not be disputed, that's going to be tough to defend. Documentary evidence in this particular case.
The DA's investigation centered around Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Organization's chief financial officer. The Manhattan District Attorney's probe began after Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, revealed that he had paid hush money to silence 2 women before the 2016 presidential election who claimed they had sexual encounters with Trump. Former President Trump issued a statement blasting the district attorney's investigation, saying they will do anything to stop the MAGA movement and me, even if it involves prosecutorial misconduct and harassment of a political opponent, which they are using at levels rarely seen before. But Michael Cohen also alleged that Donald Trump had deliberately provided incorrect valuations of assets and official documents and may testify against Trump.
I'm not saying he's the star witness here, but it's likely, as Trump's personal lawyer for many, many years, that he has some sort of information that's valuable. And so, will he pop up on a witness list? I would presume so.
The Manhattan District Attorney has been working in parallel with the New York State Attorney General's office. Their investigations include scrutinizing a $21.1 million tax deduction Trump took after local opposition stopped his plans to build a golf course on his estate outside Manhattan. The question now is whether Donald Trump will face state and federal charges, and will Alan Weisselberg flip on Trump to strike a deal with prosecutors. Frank Ucciardo, TRT World, New York.
Let's get more from Michael Zeldin, who's a former U.S. federal prosecutor and host of the podcast That Said with Michael Zeldin. He joins us now from Washington. Welcome to Money Talks. Now, first of all, can you tell us a bit more about these charges against the Trump Organization? And we know that the former president has not directly been charged here, but does this pose any sort of a threat to him personally or to his family members?
So you have to analyze this in 2 steps. First step is that the indictments that are expected charge Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of Trump Organization, with criminal individual liability charges, tax related. Then there are charges against Trump Organization for their conduct in relationship to those tax charges against Weisselberg. The thought is they paid Weisselberg benefits which he refused to declare on his taxes, and then the Trump Organization itself didn't declare them on their taxes. So there's this mutual failure to report taxable income. Now, that's really the beginning and the end of this part of the case. The hope from prosecutors is that Weisselberg can help them understand whether or not there are bank and other lending charges against Trump Organization, which Donald Trump will have personal knowledge of. So in the setup piece, for example, they talked about the tax deduction for that golf course. That will not be charged here today. Their hope, I think, is that Weisselberg can help them make that charge.
Now, Weisselberg, of course, has not flipped, so to speak, but given that he's been charged here, as has the Trump Organization, does that then increase the pressure on him to cooperate with prosecutors at the risk of facing a tougher sentence?
Well, yes, if you cooperate and plead guilty, you get a lesser sentence recommendation. That's typical. But in this case, based on what we anticipate, what Alan Weisselberg will be charged with, the likelihood of jail time is pretty slim. It's not the type of case that normally is brought even criminally, but when brought criminally necessarily results in any lengthy prison term. Remember, in the Mueller case, we saw people who made like small lies to Mueller getting sentences of 0 to 3 months. So I'm not sure that Weisselberg feels a great deal of pressure on the basis of these charges. He's been given an opportunity to cooperate for a very long time, has steadfastly refused to cooperate, or have said, I have nothing to cooperate with. And so you're asking me to do something I have no capacity to do. But, when you see your name on the paper that says this is a criminal indictment, maybe it gives you a different perspective.
Okay, now we know that former President Trump is also the subject of other inquiries. Give us a sense of what other charges he may face, and if convicted, what might that mean in terms of punishment?
So, former President Trump is under investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's Office of New York for various charges related to fraud in his business. That's the primary effort that's being brought against him. The other more collateral matters are most likely not going to result in criminal charges. For example, there was the Mueller investigation where they alleged that he engaged in obstruction of justice. I'd be very surprised to see any obstruction of justice, Mueller-related charges being brought against him criminally. Similarly, some people have said that he could face criminal liability for inciting the insurrection on January 6th. Again, theoretically possible, but I think very unlikely. So I think that what we're seeing in the Manhattan DA's office are the principal threats to the Trump organization and to Donald Trump individually.
All right, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us on the show with your analysis, Michael Zeldin.